Hey guys, welcome back to our Denmark campaign, and today we're going to be expanding Denmark, finishing up on our Scania war that we started in last episode. If you missed last episode, we recovered from Denmark's huge debt and we began working towards the economy. As you can tell, it's been a slippery road, and we did our best to recover from the Black Plague, which is still going on, but we focused on maintaining as much population as possible. This is because our population is what's going to drive the economy, and we don't start with a lot of population. We're going to need to focus on growing our population. And the way we're going to start is by reclaiming our Danish brothers away from Sweden back into Danish hands. So, at the very start of the video, we're going to start off by declaring war. Just because I'm going to need a diplomat for the peace deal, I'm going to slightly increase my diplo spending. And this is important, especially with diplomats. As you play the game, you kind of remember when you're gonna need them. We're going to raise our levies. Click through the events, and here is going to be our stack of 9,000 troops. We're going to begin by moving up into Copenhagen. I see that our Vassal in Lubeck is sending troops, so we're going to enable attachment to our armies. If you see your vassals are not sending troops correctly, you can manage your subjects and send them to manage troops. We're going to begin moving in to Lund and sieging it down. Now, because I suspect I'm going to have to win several battles, I'm going to fight the Lund army, sorry, the Scania army, and we're going to stack wipe them because we're significantly bigger than them. We're going to also siege down Asbo, and we're going to move towards this location over here. And with a very quick blitz, we've been able to take control of our initial war goals and move into Halmstad as our final location that we have to siege down. Now, looking into our eventual peace deal, we want to focus on a few things. Namely, returning all of our cores back. We want to use the return cores because it's going to be cheaper and we're not going to suffer any aggressive expansion. And then with the remaining 73 war score, we can begin to plot to gain money out of Sweden and potentially additional territory. But for now we have to focus on raising our war score. We have to be cautious because the Swedish army still outnumber us. However, we are hoping that they do not merge up with Norway. So we're going to be moving towards locations where they're likely to be moving towards merging. And we have spotted the Norwegian army, right? If I was sieging on the east side, both the armies would reach me roughly at the same time. But by moving up, we can hope to intercept them, and we can begin to move on them. And we can use our divide and conquer strategy to suffer devastating casualties to them. And now we actually are tied for troops. And we can begin sieging this city down too. Now the Swedish army has revealed itself, and even if they do link up, we're still going to outnumber them. I like not having to cat and mouse the sieges, so even though I'm going to lose a few troops, I'm going to move in and take this battle. And we're going to suffer loss, but we inflict better casualties. So we can take this loss as we are more focused on war material than we are actually winning battles. Realistically, that should have been avoidable by waiting for morale, but it wasn't entirely necessary. And again, we're still taking war score because we have this siege down. I suspect they might be moving down, so I'm going to target this location. Now, I want to try catching Norway again before they meet up with the Swedish army, so I'm going to move into this forest and kind of hunt for the Norwegian army because I saw them moving down. They managed to escape me, however, they're still significantly smaller than me. And I think this will be the last battle of the war. We destroy their armies. We do end up taking a lot of casualties. Maybe by avoiding a few battles you can avoid those. But these 5,000, I think, well, yeah, 5,000 brave Danishmen are going to be remembered in history, right? For their commitment to the great Danish Empire. We do want to just kind of siege down Sweden As we move around through our sieges, we're going to be able to loot some of it. And we are approaching 100 war score. So if you guys are struggling with Denmark, which it is a tough opening, this can be the first war where we break Sweden, so that subsequent wars can be easy. Because realistically, guys, Sweden is very powerful. Not just because Paradox are Swedish devs, right? Because I've crushed their armies, I feel confident enough to start splitting them. I'm going to send one half to chase and one half to continue sieging. I would like to take over this province, which has a fort. So I'm going to begin sending my troops that way. We have captured some camp followers. We're going to immediately ransom them for $3. We're going to chase them down. Actually, they're probably going to run to their capital, so we're going to move this way. The reason we want to siege down this province is because you do get a penalty for demanding locations you haven't sieged down. And you also, for example, you won't be able to siege down this location. Now, as you can notice, our troops are losing food, so we're going to cancel our operation. We're going to give them food with our navy. And Sweden's going to capitulate. We're going to get our core treaties, and I will be back with a good peace deal. This is, I think, perfect 100 war score. However, this doesn't leave us with any money. Now, our remaining runs are quite low, so I think we can afford to just go for full land, except that aggressive expansion would be a limiting factor. These top 3 countries don't matter too much, but if we look at Lubeck, which would be the next highest, they're going to be under 40, which is the threshold, and I suspect we might not have too many wars. We're going to need to build up a little bit. So, even though I think we were initially planning on getting money from the Swedes, this could be a better long-term play, just to kind of prepare some of our subjects. And we have conquered a lot of new locations. I'm not entirely sure why the achievements are showing up again, but the only issue is our cores become integrated, which is great. We can kind of talk about this province later, but all of this is going to be unintegrated, and it's not going to be cored because of the culture. The Swedes really hate us, so I'm not going to be able to accept them. I believe if I create country here, its capital is going to be here or here. So we're going to create a custom subject, this province, and we're going to make it, I think, a fiefdom. If you guys want to know how I'm making this decision, is you want to have equally strong fiefdoms and vassals. Currently I have 1-1, so I'm just going to create a fiefdom. And in 1.3 you do want to have bigger subjects. We are not planning to annex them quickly, but eventually we're going to enforce their culture, and once they convert everything to Danish, we can diplomatically annex them. Like this. For here, we want to do something similar, and we can create a vassal here. We want to not give up a valuable character, so we're going to send this lady to rule, because we're not particularly invested in the ruler's strength, and we're going to give them these smaller provinces, and they're going to have decent proximity here, a little worse proximity there, but again we're more threatened by the Swedish part, and by giving them a month tech, very green, a little less green. This is because they can take advantage of the lake. Now, following our conquest, we are not making a ton of money. We can lower our budget, and we can look at how we're going to build an economy. As you can tell, none of this is particularly profitable for us. We don't have a ton of access to industry, especially right now. Eventually we can see a more profitable way. RGOs we can't really expand because of the lack of money, but there is one RGO that's going to be critical for us, and it's going to be in the Malmö province. This is a huge reason of why we fought for this part. 1, it is a significant amount of pop. 2, there is this amber tile. This is going to help us because we're going to build this tile up and this tile up, and we're going to be able to export them. It's going to be a valuable good leaving our market, and I suspect we're already exporting it to Paris and to Dublin. This is going to be an increasingly important method for us to make money. The other export good we're going to have is this fish. Normally fish is not a very valuable RGO. However, there is this sneaky modifier right here. The Scania herring market, which increases our output with an additional 500%. So, if I understand this correctly, a single fish RGO here basically becomes 6 RGOs. So for us it's going to be incredibly profitable to press this button. Right, we're producing just a ton of fish for the amount of money we're paying. And so actually, because we sieged this down, we had battles, we have devastation. So we're going to focus on the recovering. And with our high admin cabinet member, we're going to focus on increasing province control, because while we do have proximity, our control hasn't built up yet, right? So we have proximity for 32. Also, not the segment cost, 66, right? But we're gonna not have the control of it yet. So we want to keep an eye on these two guys, make sure we move them around this whole Malmo tile, and we get it integrated into our country, not just in the game mechanic sense, right? It's already integrated, but actually integrated into our economy. Now, for this tile, we do not have a majority just because Danish is actually the lowest pops, and both these coaches are not assimilating. We have very terrible control. It's not a particularly valuable province. It does have a ton of people, but we're not hard pressed to focus on it. The way we'd solve it is by basically culture converting and increasing control at the same time. We are getting some movement out. Now, because the Black Plague just recently passed, we might be able to build a ton of settlements across our territory. So this is going to be the next major step for us. We're going to begin slowly spamming settlements, recover our population as much as possible in the rural locations which we kind of could not protect the same way that we protect our cities with hospitals and isolating the cities. Okay, our cabinet member finished with the recovery of the prosperity. As you can tell, it's still bad. You can notice that there's been battles, but prosperity can now finally build. There's no longer devastation, and we can have him on reducing water exhaustion for now. Meanwhile, this guy is continuing to build control for us, and with the few money we've saved up, we can continue clicking settlements and valuable locations. I think you could make an argument that maybe we should get some loans in, and because our credit worthiness is pretty high, I do kind of feel willing to do this. I want to experiment kind of taking more loans for development, and I think this is like a good amount of settlements in the beginning. They're going to drive migration attraction, and they're going to drive population growth in our country. Because this guy has a high diplomatic value, I recommend, especially in the beginning, to look at our values and see what's going to give us a lot of value. Not pun intended. Currently, naval is a little lackluster because even if we lose a single point, we're going to lose our incredibly valuable reform. It is something that we wanted to keep an eye on from episode 1. I think a very valuable thing to push would be towards innovative, because while this gives us a little bit of satisfaction equilibrium, none of this is particularly beneficial. If stability investment's nice, but stability is not that important for us because of this estate interaction. Actually, we're going to hit it because our peasants are very happy. We can focus on moving towards innovativeness. This is additionally beneficial because we currently have none of the reforms, and so when we want to embrace the reforms, which start in Italy, so it's going to take them, this one starts in Paris, it's going to take them a little bit to make their way to us. By the time we can at least get off of traditionalist and move towards innovative, which will make it innovative, which will make it cheaper for us to embrace them. Okay, following a few months of just paying down our loans, we are now at 0. Our settlements have just finished building, and our crown power should start recovering. We can begin to examine our laws. For example, our language of pleading, we're going to focus on a high free subjects, because we're going to focus on making money from our peasants more than our nobles, because we are a very we have very high peasant enfranchisement. Additionally, with our next parliament, we can begin moving away from traditional distribution towards most likely favoring the wealthy, because we're going to focus on making a ton of burger money, right? Because our most profitable industry is effectively trade. In the meantime, because we have given time for our population to recover, we can also move our increasing control as our cabinet member died. But we're gonna want to save up money to expand the fish in Malmo. We can also hire... This is a nice guy. He's going to boost our development. Development is very important, and we are very kind of behind on development. So whenever we don't need something important or urgent, we're going to focus on improving development, especially here in Zealand, as well as here in Funen, which is Despair of Islands. Okay, our parliament has finally arrived, and kind of skimming over it, luckily, the only very high base success chance policy is going to boost our defensive a ton, which is a value I'm not a huge fan of. I kind of tend to want to push towards offensive. So looking over our other policies, we can kind of, tank the defensive push, but we have this policy which will give us food purchase efficiency and less consumption, which is going to help grow our population marginally. But I think this is a very interesting policy. Now, the debate effect is not particularly useful. If we succeed, we're going to get this effect for 10 years, which importantly is going to lower the cost of expanding amber and fish, which are like the two main RGOs we're going to focus on expanding. So I think this is kind of a rare pick. We normally don't pick this, but we're going to try passing this reform. We can commit to more serfdom push, but we can also push towards innovative, as this is something we've been waiting for. And this, we can potentially destroy this merchants guild. It's not amazing, but it's also not too terrible. We can also get a free subject push, which is great. And this is not a great suggestion. Here I think we want to give the nobles what they want. And potentially we can anger the burghers a little bit by destroying one of their bad buildings. Now we do have 70 support, we didn't need to get it up that high. This can let us potentially tank a few bad events, or with a few good events we can potentially change a law. I don't see a ton of more reasons to click these buttons, so we're just going to let the Rural Craft Center pass. And we're going to get this effect for 10 years, which is going to tell us that we should focus down Malmo and the Amber. Just to check with the goods building, because it gives us good values. You can see the profit of investing in Malmo is huge. And because it is huge, we likely would be very willing to take out loans to develop it now while it's cheap. The only reason we don't max it out right now is because we need to promote the population for it to work in this fish field. And this, fish RGO. And basically, I'm going to keep an eye on this location. As long as we kind of get close to filling it, I'm going to build another level. And after 10 years, if we do not have the expected max level, I'm just going to take out loans and I'm going to top it up. Hopefully I can keep in mind. the way we can check is if we click on our flag, you should see it right here. It's going to run out in September of 1367. Now, because we're at peace with the conquest of Scanland, we get this event. Now, the 7 stability could be nice, the 5 army interdiction could be nice if we're planning to keep fighting battles, but it moves us more towards land, which I'm not thrilled about. And second, we're not planning on fighting too many battles, but instead we're going to focus on the reintegration, which is going to boost our max control by 15. Considering the 2 locations we're very much looking at right now are in Scanland, we're expecting to get a ton more max control. Looking at our RGO screen, you can tell that I've queued up another fish development, but we are already missing almost 1,000 laborers, right? A few of them already promoted since we built the last one. So it would take a lot of time for us to fill this one. And because we need to keep this as a rural location, we can't actually build a library here. So we can also look at other RGOs we can build. And I think good ones to always expand are cities near your main location. Why? Because you know that you've already upgraded them, so you know you're not going to delete the cap. And you're going to have very high control over here. So especially your capital, I think it's a worthwhile one. Because it's also going to boost, in this case, because it's a Witao, it's going to boost the food in our market. And it's going to make our people, our pop grow faster. As you can tell, we're still recovering from the outbreak that we had. One of the reasons we can focus so much on RGOs and building up our various RGOs is while they're not good, our country still has a very high traditional economy value. And so we can start building up now, and later as we push towards capital economy, we're going to unlock more markets and more beneficial buildings, and we can set up a more meaningful economy. So we just finished a very important research, and that is this one right here. The formal city rights, which makes the costs of upgrading towns and into cities and technically megalopolises a lot reduced by 10%. This is kind of critical because upgrading them is very expensive. Next, we should really queue up local infrastructure, which gives us one of the most beneficial stats in this game, which is proximity efficiency. The reason that it's important to think about proximity in cities is because control is based off of your proximity, and cities is where you're going to get a ton of tax base. Now, Malmo is a kind of critical location, especially in the early game. Now, this event eventually goes on, I think goes away around the 4th age, which is going to suck. By then, we're going to have a very robust economy, and we're not going to need, we're not going to notice all of these fish disappearing from our economy. But this produces a huge amount of food, right? The food productivity in this town is very high, so we actually don't need to worry about the food here. And even these 2 towns are wheat towns. So 2 very good cities would be in Lund, which I believe is already a town, but here Helsingborg is going to be another good city we can build, and it's going to be very close to our capital. We're going to have good proximity here. Now, one of the random chance events has given us a corrupt advisor, which lowers our tax efficiency, which really sucks, but it additionally reduces our cost for revoking privileges. Now, regardless of this cabinet, we would love to repeal some of our nobility privileges because they have fortification licenses, which I think is a terrible privilege. I really dislike it. Royal marriage rights are okay. Primacy of the nobility is, interesting, but I think because of how much power it gives them and how little happiness it gives them, I'd like to repeal it. And land rights is good because it allows you to expand RGOs, but it hurts your enfranchisement, which again we want to max, and it gives you a lot of these bad values we don't like. So we'd like to defang the nobility as much as possible. Now, this is going to cost us a lot of stability, right? Currently, it's going to cost us 43, and this is with the corrupt reduction. Now, something fun is that we don't have a cabinet head. So what we can actually do is we can promote this given noble to a cabinet head, and this doubles the effects of his traits. So our taxes really suffer from this guy's corruption. Our revoke privilege cost also is severely reduced, and we can now revoke privileges for half of the stability it would have cost otherwise. So we can immediately cut away the fortification licenses, and if we're kind of crazy, we can continue. Now I'm going to let the... Actually, there's no point letting the nobles because they're currently on 18. It might be worthwhile to just send these guys to 0 happiness. Now you could wait to have their power update, which I think I'm gonna try doing by letting the month take over. And I think they lost a couple % of power. Now obviously, because the guy we ended up making the cabinet head was a member of the nobles, this boosts their power a little bit, but removing the privileges is going to counter it. And again, we can save another 2% of stability. So I think this one would be a good one because it gives them autonomous power. And again, we're gonna let them be really mad. They don't seem to have a ton of locations. The month takes over. The cost has been reduced even more. We want to keep nobility controlled serfdom. I think we can be happy with keeping raw marriage rights. Auxilium et consulium I think is useful for our initial war, but actually we can later move to remove it, but because of these 2 values it gives us. But for now I think it's fine to keep it. And it's a question of should we keep land rights. I think it's really useful to have, you know, the nobles expand your RGOs, but I don't think it's necessary for us. And again, we're on a defang the nobility as much as possible, and they already hate us, so there's no, you know, reason for us to kind of keep them happy, right? I suspect we might have a slight nobility rebellion as power really hard, and we can now kind of, you know, tax them much higher because our max tax is better. I do really like this expand gathering industries with an additional 33 reduction on top of our rural crafts reduction, which is going to help us max out the fish and the amber very quickly. So let's keep this in mind as we kind of continue. Now our heir can marry, and because he's a guy, we're going to keep our dynasty, and we can kind of look to marry England. Hungary had a bachelorette that is 47, so she's a little old for our guy. And England I think is a good idea to keep around, especially with how much they're dominating France. We want to make sure we don't fall under a personal union, but I think it'll be fine for now. And you know, this guy's 16, let's give him this girl. We're going to also ship a diplomat to improve relations with England. Eventually maybe we can fish for an alliance, but again, we don't want to be brought into these French wars. So, you know, maybe it's good to keep our diplomatic relationship a little more ambiguous. I've been saving up a little bit of money, and in the process, I have managed to notice that when we move the capital to Copenhagen, we haven't built all the buildings we could have. More importantly, a very important building to have in your capital, the Chancery. Now, I've let the nobility insurgents take over, and this month we're going to get the Civil War, and they're going to spawn in this city of Wilburg. So we're immediately going to raise the nearby levies, we can call in our ally, and it's not a huge concern. And hey, the Danish nobility remaining in our country is very happy with the current situation. So what we can do now is we can start the parliament to expand gathering industries. Now, passing it is not a huge concern, but it will for free expand our Malmo RGO, and it will also boost its prosperity, which is valuable. But we really care about this. So we're going to start it, and with the reduced cost and the money we've saved up. We're going to open the RGO, and we're going to click 9 times. Why 9? Because we know that if we pass it, it's going to get increased once, and I suspect we're going to be able to pass it very easily. This burger request seems very nice. The plutocratic movement, I think, is also a very nice one to accept, and the innovative is also nice to accept. The nobles are back to not liking us, but you know, they'll get over it because we're gonna slam out this revolt soon. Additionally, with some leftover money, we can expand this amber, even though they won't be able to you know, fill it instantly. And if we're not sure what's a gathering you know, RGO, we can also filter it here and notice that this salt is gathering, which will be valuable. Actually, both salt tiles and another amber, which I can do something like this. So even though it's farther and we have less control, we're going to make less money over it. And this is a good spread. And as our levies kind of show up, we're going to try kind of gathering our armies here. We're going to make sure the king is still in the fleet. Gather our armies and just meet the nobles. We are going to kill some of our peasants, but you know, it is what it is. We're going to siege down Vilburg, and hopefully that's a quick end in the war. Our fish are updating nicely. Our other RGOs upgraded, and our thing's gonna pass. Obviously, we're not gonna have the laborers to man them immediately, but we, at a reduced cost, were able to max out our RGOs nicely. And with time, it's going to fill out. It will be beneficial to get a positive connection with Lüneburg, because if we do end up attacking into the HRE, which I think would be really important, we kind of want to take over the Hostinian culture too. We want to make sure we have positive relationship with the big guys that surround our conquests. Currently, we want to try looking at maybe urbanizing more of our locations. Likely this one right here. Basically everything on this little island should be urbanized because there's so much wheat. We can feed everything. And then Helsingborg, I think, is a good priority to have. Now, we have a good reduction on the actual resources, and we have the research reduction, so it's only going to cost us 369 gold. So we're going to begin saving up for that. Now, something kind of annoying when you get like an event like this, where you have the option to get a bunch of legitimacy, and we'd love to get more opinion with France and Castile, is that we're already at 100 legitimacy, and you kind of want to keep it because of the extra crown power. So what can we do? We can either hire courtiers, which it's always good to have more characters because it kind of brings up the highest quality characters you're going to be able to appoint, or we can alternatively assign a few more privileges. Realistically, the burghers are going to have the best ones for us. For example, shipwright contracts, land of commerce, and guild investments are going to be good ones for us to start with. The most important one, I think, is land of commerce. We did remove a lot of privileges from the nobles, and they do have a few good ones, like elaborate court life. Elite council is okay if you ignore the aristocracy push. And noble navy, I think, is okay, although this modifier is not the best. I tend up not to build too many galleys, but the naval push is nice. Additionally, noble patronage of the arts is nice, even though it gives more power than happiness. We have been kind of screwing over the nobles, but they're at the perfect 25 power, and we're taxing them very nicely. But we could, if we give them a few more happiness, tax them a little harder. And because we're already pushing innovative, I think it would be beneficial for us to hand this out to them. Everyone's very happy, and we can take our 10 legitimacy and quickly get up to the max again. So whenever you get a legitimacy event, check that you're full, and in this case, use it. Now, just while I'm speaking, I've noticed a massive shift happening And it's that Sweden's kind of getting destroyed because the crown union fell apart here. I'm not entirely sure what happened, why the king here is also not in charge here, but this is certainly a development because our main rival has kind of shifted from from Sweden to Norway. But we did leave like a very devastating blow, so we're stronger than both of them combined. It does, I think, create a situation that we can take advantage of, because as you can tell, Norway is struggling to propagate proximity to much of their land. Given this is where all like the valuable land of Norway is, as you can tell, there's almost no money to be made in these locations yet. I think the wild game can eventually be useful. These fuel tiles are useful. But again, we kind of can focus down the coast here and create subjects here, because this land in Sweden is incredibly valuable. The copper tiles, which have a modifier kind of like our fish modifier, and all of these iron tiles are going to be used to, spoiler alert, fuel a tooling industry. Because while it's not particularly profitable now, it's going to be profitable when we get the iron supply. We have let's take a look here. We're going to replace this production modifier with this one, which is going to be much more efficient at making tools for us. And we're going to have all of this iron coming from here, and we're going to fuel it with an additional input of, I believe it's we may have not got no bog iron smelter. I apologize, on bog furnace. We have a ton we can build ourselves, because we can build it in the topography map, in wetlands. And if you notice, there's an additional wetlands we can build it. So if we here click remove the market and remove our locations, we can build all of these bog iron smelters in our subjects, which again are going to produce even more iron with a little bit of coal, which we can get through charcoal manufacturers. So this is going to be a very useful economic loop, aside from the current kind of RGO based money we're making. And if you can tell, our tax base has been shooting up. Why? Because of the conquest of Scania, and because of our very, very heavy development on the RGOs. As you can tell, amber and fish are huge goods by tax base for us, compared to the wheat, which again, our whole country is covered in wheat, especially our core. So I should tell you just how beneficial these two locations are. If you open especially the tax base view, you can tell they're almost as valuable as our capital, because it's kind of underdeveloped right now. This additionally means that we want to really factor in a sergeantry here for our capital, but additionally the bailiff building, because the bailiff just gives free max control plus 20, and in both of these locations we have about 80 control, and here 70. And remember, we have a temporary modifier for 15. So I'm going to very quickly build bailiffs here and here. Even though they're close, I think eventually we can delete them once we improve our infrastructure. But for now we're going to build these bailiffs, and they're going to grow our control here. Now sadly they are going to basically make our nobles more powerful in these locations, but that is something we're just gonna have to accept. Our old king has died, and we now have the new king of Christopher III Estridsen. Our last king was very influential in conquering, kind of breaking Sweden, setting up this betrayal by Norway. We want to instantly make sure that our new king is an admiral to help us push naval. Hopefully we can get a naval trade for them. And additionally, once we finish pushing innovative, we can kind of bolster our naval value. But now we're going to focus on kind of tying our country together economically, continuing our RGO focused economy, and then transitioning it to a more capital economy. And as you can tell, we've already begun a passive shift towards capital. Eventually we can use our guys to do this. And I'm gonna kind of keep bouncing my control cabinet guy around. Alternatively, because I've been bouncing around and I keep forgetting him, I can just kind of set him up to develop this province here to try helping these locations out, because remember they're going to try urbanizing them, and a big cutoff value for us is 20 because it allows our pups to consume additional goods that they wouldn't otherwise, which allows us to then tax the goods when they're being produced. Now we have a very interesting event, and here we can remove our very corrupt cabinet member, cabinet head, and considering we already used him and now he's just kind of hurting our tax base. Again, this gets doubled, so it's a -4. We can remove him from cabinet, and we can work to hire someone else, for example this gentleman from the clergy, to replace him. Our bailiffs has just finished building, and this kind of helps us notice that our maximum control has shot up to 97 and here 92, which is going to allow us to make the most out of the tax base, which again, very high. Waiting for a couple months, we now can begin the construction of one of our first town upgrades, and remember it's going to be one of many for us. An important building for us would be the library. We are kind of struggling to promote people, and they will also help us with literacy, which helps us with research and with institution growth. Additionally, as we're conquering Sweden and Norway, we need to look at culture conversion and eventually also hosting. Currently, the way it works is you can convert a culture if your influence is higher than their tradition. And as you can tell, our influence is very low. And by building libraries, we can increase it. And eventually we can also increase it with universities. So we're going to start building up libraries, which will help us both train a better workforce and kind of promote our culture. Now we're going to be missing books for this. This is something you probably want to take a look at ahead of time. And I think for now, we could just build the one in Copenhagen or one here because it will be a little more efficient. So I think I'll do first one in Flensburg and then one in Copenhagen later. I think as our next cabinet approaches, it will be valuable for us to begin considering what we're going to do. Kind of skimming over this, they don't seem particularly appealing, and we want to focus on this situation here. Remember, we can I've started building a spy network because we can use the destroy enemy casus belli on Sweden to kind of capture the last valuable parts of it. However, we cannot do the same for Norway. So we can use a parliament casus belli to attack Norway. Something else that's nice touch for us is that they have a single fortification in their country in Oslo. So once we capture that, we'll be able to basically have free pickings with the rest of the country and carve it up as we see fit. This is kind of a more aggressive push towards Scandinavia than I normally do, but I think considering that Scandinavia is kind of currently weak, right? Normally they're united. Sweden also has an alliance with Veliki Novgorod, our other rival, but they're similarly weak. So we can kind of focus to dominate the Baltic. Just with the banking containment, we are going to be able to get casus belli in Norway, and we're going to pick this because it's not fortified. Should be kind of an easy target to reach. With the tax exemption, we are going to be able to either pass the debate or hit a law change. And remember, we are stuck on traditional distribution, which kind of screws over our taxes a little bit. So what we're actually going to do, we're going to give the nobles less taxes. We're going to lower the levy for the clergy, even though we're going into war. And we're going to ask for a law change favoring the wealthy. So even though we gave them a tax cut, after we implement this law, their taxes are going to go up. I think we've additionally, because they're so happy, we can use this action, and the emergency, the extra taxes action. And now we've set ourselves quite nicely for a war with Norway, which we are expected to win pretty heavily because of our much higher levy army. And again, we have these kind of subjects to bolster us a little bit. So I'll see you when we start with that.